We are remembering former President Jimmy Carter. He passed away today at 100 years old after spending nearly 2 years in hospice care. Carter was a one-term president who built a reputation as a global humanitarian. Two on your sides, Dave McKinley takes a look back at his life and his legacy.
What's been the best part of your stay?
I think the hospitality, the friendship of people here, and making us feel at home.
That was Jimmy Carter, some 15 years removed from the White House when he and his wife Rosalind visited Niagara Falls in 1996, a place he'd been to as a young man.
Well, I came here when I was a submarine officer in 1951.
In Western New York was a place Carter would return to as the nation's 39th president during his single term in office.
I think it was October 28th of 78. And he was campaigning for Governor Hugh Carey.
David Sherman is the former editor of the Amherst Bee and took pictures of the event.
He didn't go into the crowd. He simply spoke at the podium. And as far as I can remember, he simply turned around, stepped down, and got back on Air Force One.
Carter was inexorably linked to a couple of major events in Western New York, which occurred during his presidency. The blizzard of '77, for which he signed a disaster declaration that led to the creation of FEMA, and Love Canal, the environmental disaster in Niagara Falls, which led to his signing legislation establishing the EPA Superfund. For all that time that Carter was president, John LaFalce was serving as a congressman from this area.
One of the things that I used to love were the dinners that he'd have for members of Congress, where he would stand up there and say, okay, toss questions at me. And the members of Congress would toss the hottest questions they could, the most difficult questions. And he answered them better than any other president ever, at least within my experience.
Carter's last visit here as president came in 1980.
I remember that date vividly.
Demonstrating spryness on his 56th birthday, Carter leaped on top of his limo outside the Niagara Falls Convention and Civic Center to address well-wishers after having signed legislation committing the federal government to 90% of cleanup costs for the West Valley nuclear site and for the permanent relocation of Love Canal residents. It was in the waning months of his ill-fated bid for re-election.
Hundreds of people gathered outside the Falls Convention Center to greet the president, not all friendly.
The economy was poor. There'd been an energy crisis, record inflation, and the Iranian hostage crisis. And with Carter's failure to bring those American captives home, the writing was on the wall.
And his standing in the polls plummeted. And that's the principal reason, I think, that he lost the 1980 election.
Where Carter would only carry 6 states and lose to Ronald Reagan in one of the biggest landslides in history.
Well, I think he's going to have at least 2 legacies. Number one, as president of the United States. Number 2, as the past president of the United States. Now, you might argue about his legacy as president, but there's no question that he probably is the most outstanding past president in American history.
Returning home to Plains, Georgia, Carter would eventually become the nation's longest-lived president, surviving another 42 years, during which time he continued to work on issues dear to him involving diplomacy, human rights, and helping the poor, all with the personal traits that some might find lacking among too many politicians these days.
Kindness, consideration, thoughtfulness, one of the injunctions that we are supposed to be pursuing. Love your neighbors. He personified that.
And that was our Dave McKinley reporting. And people from all over are sharing their thoughts tonight about the passing of former President Jimmy Carter. Tonight, we are looking at some of the people who are remembering his legacy. Some say former President Jimmy Carter and his wife Rosalind were Habitat for Humanity's most devoted supporters.
Their assistance has really helped make Habitat what it is today.
Their decades of service to build safe and affordable homes shined a light on the nonprofit's mission.
Jimmy Carter and Rosalind Carter were really on board and trying to draw attention to this and solve this problem for the last 4 decades.
From raising money to helping bring in volunteers, Kennedy says Carter made a difference.
His impact that he has had on this organization and to the mission of a world where everyone has a decent place to live has just been incredible.
Many leaders are also paying tribute.
America and the world, in my view, lost a remarkable leader.
President Joe Biden is honoring his dear friend.
What I find extraordinary about Jimmy Carter, though, is that millions of people all around the world, all over the world, feel they lost a friend as well, even though they never met him. And that's because Jimmy Carter lived a life measured not by words, but by his deeds.
President-elect Donald Trump posted on Truth Social, saying Carter did everything in his power to improve the lives of all Americans. For that, we owe him a debt of gratitude. Governor Kathy Hochul posting this on Twitter. She says Jimmy Carter was an inspiration and that he embodied decency and integrity throughout his life of public service.